76, and I have you getting to 76 with sunshine. I'm KIRO 7 pinpoint meteorologist Nick Allard.
It is mostly cloudy and 68 degrees in downtown Seattle. I'm Ursula Royteen.
Listen on your smart speakers, Amazon, Google Home, and Apple HomePod. KIRO Radio 97.3 FM. News and talk, powered by the Pacific Northwest.
The Big Lead is brought to you by 3010 Weight Loss for Life.
The Dori Monson Show on KIRO Radio. This is The Big Lead.
Coming to you from the Carter Subaru studio. Welcome to the big show. We're also streaming on Facebook Live. Ursula's back. I want to hear a little bit about your trip.
Yes, Alaska.
I know. I went to Alaska fun. This year.
You did?
Yeah. Did you catch any fish?
Oh, that's right. Of course you did.
Yeah.
We had made the big to-do about the fish. No. Okay. I did see some whales, 2 different kinds of whales, all sorts of different wildlife.
Good for
it was
you.
fun. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to hear about it.
Yeah.
We'll chit-chat in the fastest 15. I was just laughing because Nicole asked me how Seahawks coverage went yesterday.
Uh-huh.
And I said, it was great, except Paul Moyer and I were in a fight.
Oh, no.
And she goes, you put that in an email? And I said, oh, yeah, I was saying, and I told my wife all about it. And my wife said, you guys seriously are like middle school girls.
They were name calling.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And then we hugged.
I was going to say, did you make up?
Oh, yeah, then we hugged.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So
you don't want that going on.
I just finished telling that story when you came to me, so that's why I was laughing. Oh man, what a goofy
Monday.
Group of friends that I have. Okay, with all that as mere prelude, let's get right to the big lead.
The Big Lead. Top story.
So there's a headline in Seattle Times today. How should the King County Council spend $318 million for education? And the story is that King County is getting a one-time windfall of $318 million from Sound Transit to spend on education. Ooh, this sounds efficient. So we had to pay $318 million of our tax dollars. We give it to the most criminally corrupt public agency in the history of the United States. Sound Transit washes that money through all of its graft and corruption and inefficiency, and then they give it to the King County Council, and they have all these special interests that then decide how we're going to spend it on education. And I know what you're saying. You're saying, wait a second. My property taxes have gone up $2,500 the last couple of years for the schools. And now I find out the reason I have $400 car tabs is so Sound Transit, in part, can take some of that money and give it to education. We thought Sound Transit was about transportation. I know. That would be a reasonable thought process on your part. But the one factor you left out is that you live in this region where getting our money, screwing us over, and being as inefficient as possible with our dough is what government is all about. So here's my guess, $318 million for education. My guess on how that'll end up being spent, I put this up on Twitter this morning. I'm guessing they'll hire an 80-person oversight board with staffers at about $100,000 each. And then they can hire 3,098 new administrators at $100,000 each. They'll hire 2 new teachers, one at $100K and one at $99K, and then there'll be $1,000 left over for classroom programs. That's not how I think it should be spent, but I bet it'll end up being something like that by the time Sound Transit and the far left King County Council run it through their filters. Your tax dollars at work. But you know what? Hey. It's for the children, okay? Let's all stop complaining about taxes for the kid. I mean, our schools are crackerjack, and our kids, they deserve the best. We should be giving Sound Transit more money for the children, or something like that. Next up in the big league.
The Big Lead, Big Local.
Oh, my goodness. I am telling you, I have heard from so many King County Sheriff's personnel over the weekend, deputies, about the story we broke late last week, how King County Sheriff's Office is getting out of the LINKS system. This is an interagency database where you can find out if you're tracking somebody and he's done some really horrible things in Skagit County or Whatcom County or Kitsap County. The deputies in King County can know exactly who and what they're dealing with. But King County, they said, we're getting out. And why? Well, because Mitzi Johanknick and Dow Constantine have decided that the safety of the deputies and of the taxpaying public, taxpaying citizens, is a distant second to protecting illegals. They're afraid that somehow, even though there's no citizenship data entered into the system, they're afraid that somehow ICE would be able to use it and access it to do their jobs as federal law enforcement officers, even though there's no proof that it would help ICE get illegal, since, again, there is no citizenship data. But Mitzi Johanknick and Dow Constantine, they would be comfortable, because I'm telling you, King County Sheriff's deputies are telling me that people could die because of this database going away. There are, I heard from somebody in another law enforcement agency who said that they are just laughing incredulously at how reckless this is to put the citizens and their own deputies at risk. But again, they would rather, I mean, if people died because of this, that's not as important as protecting illegals around here. And let me give you another example of just how crazy all of this is. Lorena Gonzalez, Seattle City Councilwoman, she sent out an email last week that gave instructions of what to do if you see or hear anything about an ICE raid. And it gives the phone an 800 number for a hotline and they will start alerting people if there are any ICE activities. And how this is not a crime is beyond me. To be an elected official in this country and to use your public resources as a council person to send out information on how to help people evade federal law enforcement. That's criminal. I mean, some people, I was reading some stuff this weekend, some people call it traitorous. That if you have decided to help illegals evade federal law enforcement, I mean, that's a pretty serious thing. You are aiding and abetting criminals. And some analysts believe that that's like the definition of treason. You've decided, and this is where, you know, the King County Sheriffs, Dow Constantine, they will put their personnel at risk to give a illusory level of security for illegals. You have Lorena Gonzalez using her taxpayer-funded time and email to send out information on how to aid and abet criminals in this country. And what if, Let's say there was an ICE raid, and it's a dangerous person. And, we had the guy who, if he had been deported down in White Center, but instead he went back and assaulted the woman he had raped. And I had that poor woman in the studio with me. And that was a case of where our local politicians aided and abetted, and a judge aided and abetted a criminal, in this case, not just an illegal, a rapist illegal. And because they refused to cooperate with federal law enforcement, this guy went back and assaulted the woman he had raped. So what happens if one of the people that Lorena Gonzalez helps elude in ICE raid, what if that person, based on this hotline tip and the action network that'll help illegals elude federal law enforcement, what if one of those illegals then goes on to kill? And we've had 2 cases of law enforcement officers in this state recently killed by illegals. And you have a Seattle City Councilwoman who says she wants to be Attorney General. I mean, that's how insane this has all gotten. And we have a Seattle City Councilwoman who is helping aid and abet criminals in our state. Many of them dangerous. Their criminality is not just being illegal, but we're talking about people who have abused women, who have raped women, people who have committed homicide, child sex abusers, child sex traffickers, and Lorena Gonzalez wants to aid and abet them because they're here illegally. There is no higher order in this bizarre region than taking care of illegals. And this link system thing, man, the sheriff's department, they know the risk that they're being put at by this. And they are furious. Next up in the big league.
The Big Lead. Top trending.
But how do we respond to all of this? There's a story up at mynorthwest.com that Rachel Bell did about a cafe here in Seattle where they are requiring everybody to speak Spanish in the cafe. And my reaction to that is what mine usually is. When you are an adult and you own your own business, you should be able to be free to run that business how you want. If you want to go patronize that business and go in and speak Spanish, go patronize them. If you don't like that policy, don't patronize them. We're all free. But people have gotten, they had to close the comments on My Northwest because people were furious about this cafe where they're mandating that you speak Spanish. And I'm telling you right now, that's not the way to respond to something like this. Here is on the show. They've said they just want their cafe to be a full Spanish immersion zone.
We are maintaining the no English zone, and we'll let people know that this is just for Spanish only. They're welcome to sit outside, but we're keeping this a non-English zone inside the cafe.
Okay, and so a lot of people say, what if it's the other way around? What if a business said you have to speak English, and if you won't, then you have to go outside? We're going to make the foreign language speakers sit outside. That wouldn't be tolerated. The Human Rights Commission would swoop in. And you're right about that. But that doesn't mean what these women are with their cafe, that doesn't mean what they're doing is wrong. What it means is the Human Rights Commission that would go after an English-only joint, the Human Rights Commission is wrong. And is there a double standard? Of course there is. There's a gigantic double standard. But the way you fight the double standard isn't to say, I disagree with the Human Rights Commission that would go after an English-only establishment, so I'm going to protest the Spanish-only establishment. That's not how you fight it. If you believe in personal freedoms and liberties and sovereignty, if business owners want to run their business as a Spanish-language cafe, they should be allowed to. If a business owner wanted to have an English-only cafe. They should be allowed to without government interference there. Is it a one-way street? Absolutely it is. But don't make the response, I hate what human rights does, so I'm going to protest this. Flip it. Protest those human rights commissions. Protest the people who are doing things unreasonably. I don't think there's anything wrong with a cafe where everyone speaks Spanish. That's a great skill to have. One of my daughters did, full immersion, did a couple of 6 and 10 week mission trips to the DR, a Spanish-speaking country. Well, it's great. If somebody wanted to have a place here where they can go and sharpen their skills, big deal. So instead of hating on this cafe for exercising their freedom to run their business the way they want in a free country, instead of hating on them, hate on the ridiculous excess of government that would try to, people like Bob Ferguson. They would, if there was a business that said English only, Bob Ferguson and the State Human Rights Commission would try to destroy that business. You want to be angry? Be angry at government. Don't be angry at individuals, private business owners who are running their business the way they would like to. But I guess there is so much vitriol directed at these cafe owners. Don't do that. Free people in a free land. Run their business the way they want. Let's focus energy on government intrusion in our lives. Don't be as bad as the side you condemn. That's my message there, and that is your big lead for today.
The Big Lead on KIRO Radio.
Woo, we got a lot of other stuff. Oh, this is going to be interesting. $30 car tax will be on the ballot this November. I will enthusiastically support it on air, and I will enthusiastically vote for restoring $30 car tax. But the people who love big government, they say that this would really hurt Sound Transit. Yeah, that's like a big concern of mine. But the founder and director of the Northwest Progressive Institute is going to be in studio with me because I love talking to people who disagree. And we will debate $30 car tax next on the Dori Monson Show.